Hey everyone, it's me, HawkeyeG, and today's video is a campaign starter guide for the Ice Court faction of Kislev. It's been said many times already, but despite being recommended as one of the starter campaigns, you can see right here, the Kislev campaigns are actually very difficult. It's for a variety of reasons, some of which we'll learn more about as we get further into the video, but this time we're focusing on the Ice Court, which does have a little bit better of a time here than the Great Orthodoxy. You will have to figure out how to defend ourselves on multiple flanks and try to anticipate threats that will inevitably arise in the future. Of course, if you're enjoying the videos, please like and subscribe. It helps the channel, makes me feel happy, and it lets me know what you like to see. Any other feedback or questions are welcome too. Please share your thoughts in the comments below, especially if you have other advice to give. Now, for the Realm of Chaos campaign guides, I'm going to cover a quick overview of the campaign, so brief glimpse at how it plays out and what key points are, the building and military considerations, if there's any special buildings to mention or army units for certain enemies, the first rift cycle, so what you should try to get done by the time the first rift spawn, the next two rift cycles, so kind of breaking down over a little bit longer term, how you can balance your expansion, diplomacy, and the threats you're facing as you try to position yourself for stability in the long run, and then the end game strategy. What kinds of threats will appear and evolve as you grow in size and secure yourself that stable position. This includes what to focus on in order to balance holding that territory and making it into the rifts. Now, with all that being said, let's get into the video. So the first thing I like to do with these is just to try to give a brief overview of what we're going to be looking at throughout this guide. So we're going to go through an overview of these different stages of the campaign that we'll be reviewing. Now, of course, the first part is the opening, right? The very first phase of the game is to take out the enemy that we're immediately facing, not just the Vanaheimlings, but also the Ropsman clan of Kislev. They're going to hold this entire Eastern Oblast province and the cursed city of Prague. Our goal should be to get all of that done before the first set of rifts appears. Once the first set of rifts open, we want to use one, if possible. Now, I recommend going for either Slaanesh or Khorne to either get a bunch of fights and level up, or to get the rewards from Slaanesh. You also might want to go for a Soul. If we can use one, we want to use it so that we can skip one later if necessary. Otherwise, this might be the one that you skip, basically. Once we get back from the rift, we have a few things to do. We need to secure the northeast to eliminate Norska here, potentially reinforce the dwarves to the north, and create a choke point here in the northeast. We want to work towards confederating the Druzhina Enclave to the west for another province and a major city, and we need to remain competitive in the race for supporters in order to ultimately confederate Kastelton, but also because of all the boosts that you get along the way. There's also the Empire factions to the south and the dwarfs to the east. They make for good allies and trade partners as well, though Ostland does have a gold mine that you might want to take instead. Otherwise, just look towards Sylvania down here in the southeast and take their gold mine instead. If you want to win the campaign by turn 150 or so, you will want to get a soul from the next two rift openings as well. Now, it's quite alright if you don't have all the previous objectives done by this point. The more important part is that you have kept yourself diplomatically and economically stable and have been able to do the rifts at your leisure. Again, you really are pressed to do the rifts in these campaigns. You can see I've fallen very far behind in this campaign, despite growing a lot and taking a lot of land. I'm not actually about to win, right? But from here on out, it's basically about survival. Once you have control of all of the Kislevite settlements and territory, you don't really need to expand further, and frankly, you may have a hard time doing so. Our biggest concerns here are staying on track with rifts and souls, watching out for Scragg's inevitable rise in the southwest, taking over the direct defense in the northwest against the Legion of Chaos, and potentially seeing Nurgle or even Tzeentch start crossing the river in the northeast. As long as these established choke points that we have at the north of our territory are held, the campaign victory is all but secured. With that said, the next thing to talk about for this guide is any potential building and military related considerations to take into account for this campaign. Now, when it comes to building and military considerations, in Warhammer 3, Kislev actually has a fairly atypical building setup. There's major capitals, which consist of only a single settlement and will actually have several landmarks. Then there are the other provinces, which are only minor settlements and have little else of value. Right? Even if Kislev takes a nearby settlement with an actual capital, you don't actually get access to the same special buildings that you would in the capital. Now, since there's so many landmark buildings in all these settlements, I'm just going to try and focus on the more important ones instead. In Kislev, we have the Bolka Palace, which gives Ice Guard upkeep reduction, as well as recruitment of Ice Guard and Tsar Guard at the same building. It also gets us Glaive Ice Guard at tier 4 instead of at tier 5. Ice Guard are really good for Katerin, but I will talk about that a little bit more later on in this section. In Prague, we actually have a bunch of good landmarks here, right? We have one that's going to give us additional patriarchs and increased hero and recruit rank for lords, as well as corruption reduction, especially nice for drawing patriarchs from to use in an army. There's also a building that gives us global recruit time reduction and increases the global recruit capacity. This is amazing. Then there's also another one for reducing attrition faction-wide with all of the corruption mechanics, plus the plagues of Nurgle and his realm. Attrition reduction is a very important tool in this game. The last major settlement we have here is Erengrad. Now, the port is just incredibly powerful, not that I think I'd have to convince anyone otherwise. There's also a building for increasing Frost Maiden capacity and giving upkeep reduction to Little Grom and War Sleds. Heroes, of course, are great. Frost Maidens are an important piece of the Kislev roster, and both War Sleds and Little Grom are very useful to have, a couple of one or the other in each army. There's also one building that gives income for local region, but also increases your trade income faction-wide, so it's worth picking up eventually. Now, each of these major settlements also actually has unique infrastructure buildings. I kind of mentioned this before, but I want to touch on that quick here because a lot of them have global effects, right? So we have the trade district, which increases income from trade and market buildings faction-wide. We'll see markets in some of our in all of our minor settlements, actually. We have the guild district building. This reduces construction costs faction-wide. I think this is better when you're building up a settlement, but I wouldn't keep it in the long run because you want to fit this one in, which gives recruitment cost minus 10% to all armies faction-wide. So having all three of those is 30% recruit cost reduction. Pretty nice. If we take a quick look at our minor settlements, there's some different buildings here as well. Now, we have this religion building, and this is just critical. This is how you win the race for supporters. It's a good way of maintaining steady devotion income so that you can use it regularly and kind of funding its own self, right? Now, the market is always going to be better than the farm for income, and I talk about this in my quick tips video as well, but the farm does give growth and income, so it can be really useful to use as like one of the first buildings. Plus, it's also worth pairing it with a forest building on some of your border settlements, because the forest building adds the income to the farm, but also gives you the ambush chance, the casualty replenishment. The farm gives you recruitment costs, right? I didn't put it here in Noschovi because it has this, but so you can see I can get ambushes more easily here on the border of my province, and then I can run over here to get the recruit costs. This won't benefit from the income boost from the forest, but it might be worth putting a pair, like one of each of those in your border settlement in each minor settlement. Now, as for military considerations, the main thing to talk about is Katerin's bonus to Ice Guard, right? She has the 50% upkeep reduction from the trait, and she does have a skill here that gives them an additional 8 melee defense, but this isn't really the key. The key is these Ice Guard with swords. You won't be able to get a look at it this turn, but you can see 115 upkeep for Ice Guard with swords, 123 upkeep for Kossars on this army. So between her bonus plus the landmark in Kislev, we can get a really significant reduction in Ice Guard. Besides that, there aren't really any special faction-wide effects for military that we get. There aren't a lot of, there's a couple of each landmark building. This has the Ice Guard reduction. There's one in Prague for Griffin Legion upkeep. There's one in Erengrad for Elemental Bears, and then either War Bears, Snow Leopards, or both. So you have some bonuses there, but you don't, for this faction specifically, you don't really have anything to focus on particularly other than the Ice Guard and getting them into Katerin's army. As far as compositions go, there's a bit of obscure cases, but for the most part it's fighting some Kislevites at the start, then moving on to Norska for a little bit in the mid-game, and eventually just basically fighting Chaos for the rest of the game. Lots of infantry to fight early on, so we can use some line holders and ranged damage dealers. Then later on we need some anti-large options as well. We can also use the cavalry against the infantry and combine those with line holders early on, but we just have such good archer units that I think it's better to stick with that. Now with that being said, that's covered everything I wanted to for the building and military considerations. Like I said, there's things to talk about when talking about Kislev army compositions in general, but for this faction specifically, you're not really going to see anything that's super special or unique compared to other ones. So let's move on to the actual campaign guide and see how we step through things there. So at the start of this campaign, there's a war against the Kislev faction, which holds the nearby province and the major settlement as well. We really want to focus on taking all of this before the first round of rifts open. The goal is to have that territory consolidated and controlled so that the opportunity to enter the rifts is there if desired. I really think it's worth going into the rifts for something like the Slaanesh realm. You get to the second level for the bonus of money and faction-wide growth. It really helps kickstart your campaign. Now, we can get some better units from the military building at our capital once it's leveled up. Armored Kossars are going to be really good in the early game. Kossars with spears we don't necessarily need. We can just recruit the basic version. But the biggest thing we really want to focus on is taking out this Kislev faction quick. We don't necessarily want to loiter here and rely on recruiting extra units. We can just spam out Kossars. We want to take over this territory. We're going to lose supporters the more we fight Kislev, and even if we have the Urson ability active, or even if we have the Tor ability active for getting supporters from capturing settlements or getting supporters from fights, we still want to put an end to this as quickly as possible. As we progress through this part of the campaign, one of the biggest things we have to worry about is the threat of the Norskins to the northeast. This is easily the biggest variable in the early parts of this campaign. Sometimes they get beat up pretty badly by the Brotherhood of the Bear here in the northeast, and I don't have to think about them at all. Other times, they wipe out the Brotherhood of the Bear by turn 20 before I can finish taking Eastern Oblast, and I'm forced to deal with them directly. As we can see here, I've even had them send, a full stack straight to my capital past the Brotherhood of the Bear by turn 10 while I'm in the east fighting the Ropsman clan. Something that is worth doing is using the first Frost Maiden to scout and steal technology. You get the devotion bonus that way, and also keeping them around Volksgrad is going to help give you a little bit of early warning so you don't get caught completely off guard by them rushing through to your capital instead. Ultimately, it's a tough situation. You may have to leave Fort Chakova alive and travel back to the west to intercept this, or you take this and potentially expose yourself and have to regroup at the center in order to delay, which ends up delaying your push north anyway. If things are going somewhat decently, it's still possible to take over Eastern Oblast by this point. The Brotherhood of the Bear should still be alive, and the Ropsmen should be on their last legs. You may have to ambush the Ropsman clan outside of Prague in order to get their army out to give you the chance to siege the city, and this is pretty much the last piece of the puzzle. This whole process really can range from very smooth to very chaotic. As long as you don't overextend too greatly or get your army hurt too badly, it should be manageable. Now, if possible and you have time before the rifts open, you might actually want to go and deal some damage to Norska as well, wiping out an army, maybe sacking a city too, or even potentially capturing some of these cities and handing them back to the Brotherhood of the Bear temporarily would be good. It allows them to act as bait for us while we go into the rifts. Assuming that you can get all those things taken care of, it should be possible to get into the rifts at this stage. I do think going for a soul is a good option, especially if you want your campaign to end by turn 150. There's a good chance that, over the next, 90 turns, you're gonna have to miss one of the rift entries in order to really stabilize your territory successfully, right? So going for a soul here can be a good option, but like I said, I do appreciate, if you get down to the second level of Slaanesh, you'll be able to walk away with a faction-wide growth bonus and a decent chunk of change. That's really going to help kickstart you in the early game and kind of get you ahead of everybody else just a little bit. Either way, it's useful, but not altogether necessary here if other things haven't gone well enough. Now back in our home territory, with all this taken, we have the Skaven here to the northwest, but they won't really attack if there's a garrison building in Prague. They will sometimes, but it goes absolutely horribly for them, so it's not really a big threat. It's really the Norska that's still a threat here. It's better to have a small army and very low income than losing ground, right? So I don't have an army here now, but I really need to get one in order to defend against this and make sure that I don't lose anything while my entire army is away. Volksgrad is an excellent candidate for a garrison building and possibly a forest or a farm as well. Fort Chakova can also be vulnerable if the Norska decide to push through the Brotherhood of the Bear, however. You also want to make sure you're developing positive relations with the Druzhina clan as well. It's best to confederate them eventually, so we want to be building towards that. Here's also where some deals with the Empire or Dwarfs may become realistic, although that may really not happen until a little later. But overall, this is how we want the start to go. Having taken over Prague and Eastern Oblast is a solid foundation. Any progress in the rifts against Norska or gaining favor with the Empire is just a bonus, but the diplomacy with Druzhina Enclave is critical. This makes for a great starting point for this campaign, as it's a solid and defensible base of operations. We want to expand our influence over the next phases, however, so let's move on to the next cycle and see how that will play out. So the next phase is, the next 60 turns or so. Over the next 2 rift cycles, we're going to want to try and consolidate all of this Kislev territory, establish some choke points in the north here, potentially establish some diplomacy with the dwarves and the Empire, and try to gather souls as we go, as well as preparing ourselves for chaos to eventually show up, and also for Scrag to eventually appear. Once we get back from the rifts, I think there's 2 main options available to us here. Either we push northeast and secure our choke point against the Norska, or we go west first and take out the Skaven and claim Hellpit. I think a major factor here is the health of the Brotherhood of the Bear faction. They will be much healthier if we got the chance to hit Norska before going into a rift, but in this campaign, they were already dead, okay? So making sure that Norska can't sack or raid your vulnerable territory is crucial. Otherwise, you could potentially go to Hellpit if you think you have time, because fighting them will improve your relations with the Druzhina Enclave, allowing you to confederate them faster. We really just need to become stronger than them to confederate though, and so holding Dukeley's Forest here in the northeast will give us, 2 major cities and 2 provinces, which will give us double their strength. They're already on good terms with us. Should be all we need to confederate them. Plus, leaving the Skaven alive will allow them to keep attacking the Druzhina Enclave, and so it may weaken them enough for a free confederation anyway. So I think that the better option is to push Norska back to this choke point in the north, take the province in the northeast, and generally secure that side of the lands. There's few threats here currently, and we want to secure those as quickly as possible. Now, if all of those things have gone really well, we might have time to take away a province from the Empire. Whether this is even worth it is pretty questionable, especially since this still mostly functions as a minor settlement and not one of these major settlements. You might be better off making friendly deals with them, because they all really like each other except for like Talabekland, and so you might just trigger a bunch of wars against you. But this is really the only opportunity we would have to do that. Again, a possible opportunity is to fight Ostland, and if you have the ability to make a military alliance with the Druzhina Enclave from fighting Hellpit, you could actually leverage that to get them to fight Ostland with you, giving you a common enemy, improving your relations, speeding up the Confederation. Otherwise, like I've said before, taking Sylvania down here, taking out the vampire counts, would probably be a better way to do it. It's a little bit safer. You're not really going to offend anyone, especially if you can get some military access packs with the Empire. I mean, you can see here they already have a defensive alliance with Stirland, so we're going to have to pay or be paid by the vampire counts in order to go to war with Ostermark. It's what I do in this campaign. I can't really say that that is what I would specifically recommend, but you've got some spare time here, right? I don't know that going and wiping out the Norska is the right answer. It might be worth going here and either sacking or razing their primary settlement to set them back. If you capture it, you'll be revealed to Nurgle and potentially other Chaos factions early on as well, so that can definitely be a threat. I don't know if I'd really recommend that. It's just hard to find something to do to pass your time with here. Certainly, if Hellpit is still alive, it would be a better option to take them out than to really go after the Empire at this stage, and we'll be coming up on another Rift cycle soon, so it might be better to just prepare for that and try to stabilize your economy. Now, of course, all those things are assuming that everything's gone well for you, it's played out according to plan, which it certainly might not have, and you gotta be careful because with the rifts, we're kind of strapped for time. You don't want to be caught in the middle of a project while the rifts open, although it's pretty inevitable to have it happen at some point in the campaign where you just won't be able to jump in, but you don't want to waste that opportunity if you can help it, right? Like I said, frankly, fighting the Empire probably isn't worth it. I think taking out the vampire counts could be good, but if you do feel like there's not enough to do between the first and second rift cycle, right, we still have Hellpit to deal with. I could have run out here and sacked or raised the Frozen Landing instead, like I said, but ultimately I think it's difficult to do all these things. That is, weaken Norska, destroy Skaven, and take the Vampire or Empire province all before the second round of rifts opening, it's best to select one or two of these goals and focus on them, provided things went smoothly for the first 30 to 40 turns. I also think it really is important to get into the rifts at this point in time. Now is when we want to start getting souls secured for the victory. It's easy to feel like putting it off could be good. You want to secure and consolidate more territory. You want to be big first and get ahead of the game, and then you can start collecting souls. But the reality is, if you put it off, it's gonna lengthen your campaign, and it's gonna put you at greater risk deeper into the campaign, which can be pretty dangerous. Besides that, we really want to focus on building diplomatic status and strength instead. So we don't necessarily need to be fighting people that we could be making alliances with and building up in that means, improving our economy in that way. Now, from here forward, we should still be looking to confederate the Druzhina Enclave. We should also be hoping to finish the race for supporters and confederating the Great Orthodoxy before the next set of rift spawn. That means that having a complete Kislev under our control before turn 100 is the next primary goal. So if you're watching the turn timer closely, you'll notice I missed a save for turn 71, but we can see that things have essentially gone according to plan. I left the Skaven alive for way too long. It's better to take Hell Pit early and get it growing and reinforced early on so that you can establish this as a second choke point. The Skaven just don't present enough of a threat in most stages of the campaign, and because of their settlement garrison, it can actually be kind of annoying to wipe them out. You really have to try to get a hold of their armies or trick them into leaving the settlement and gain the advantage of them that way. But that's why it's best to, not wait to destroy them. Now we have control of the former Druzhina territory. We're holding a stable choke point in the northeast against the Norska. Despite the fact that Nurgle's moving in, we haven't really been facing enough pressure to overwhelm even this army. We've also built up our cities a lot as well. This is the point in time where an army reformation for Katerin should have already taken place. And it's probably time to start putting a few Streltsy and Little Grom or War Sled in every army as well. Armored Kossar and regular Kossar can still do a great job holding down most territory, but a little boost from some higher tech units can make a big difference. At this stage of the supporters race, the diplomatic attitude penalty for the Great Orthodoxy should be pretty meaningless as well. Making an ally of them prior to Confederation helps improve the visibility and knowledge of the land that you are about to inherit. I mean, you can see he's pushed way up into the north and gotten some kills, but he's also under siege in the west, so he's probably going to lose that. It also might help to fend off chaos for them, because this is going to be your territory very soon. We can also see Scrag is starting to become a growing threat in the southwest, but it's not quite time to deal with him yet. Overall, what we want to see here is the ability to defend the northeast and north central choke points, as well as the capability to control the northwest flank, to defend the northwest flank once we control it. Eringrad and the Hell Pit probably want a defensive building as well, and we probably want at least two armies to rotate between defending this northern choke point and the northwestern province. So, depending on the pace of events and several variables here, we'll end up with most, if not all, of Kislev by this time, and we may not quite have the means to control it all, but that's why it's so important to establish these choke points as early on as possible. This particular campaign has actually gone pretty decently well. We lose the one settlement in the Troll Country, but Kostalton has taken several other territories in advance of the Confederation in the north. We can actually use these as decent defensive locations and sort of lightning rods, where these are not the priority targets, right? We're not too concerned with defending these settlements, but they're great bait. Like, you can centralize your defense out here, sacrifice these territories, and retreat to your own territory as necessary when you're kind of bouncing between different territories to defend. It's much more important to hold on to your central territories where you're actually making money, but yeah, these are just a good opportunity to waste the enemy's time. This is also around the time where the rifts will open once more. This may be one of the more difficult times to enter into the rifts. There's a lot of new territory to try and control, probably not enough armies to do it with, and a lot of different things to manage on a bunch of different fronts. It's important to keep track of the race of souls in order to win, however. As you can see here, I've been slacking, and it's going to cost me many extra turns to catch up properly. It might be better to get a soul on the first two rift sets instead, and then have this be the rift set that you skip if you're set on finding... and then have this be the rift set that you skip if you're finding yourself unable to manage all of these settlements and different things properly at this time. It should be possible, though, to control all of the Kislevite territories at this time and still make your way into the Rifts. This does mean you'd have to ignore any other projects you might have going on. It's tough because Kostaltin's territory might not be properly built to be able to defend correctly against any threats that you have. But if you make sure to focus on readying up the Northwest for defense and keeping on track for everything else, it should still be pretty manageable. So now that we've reached this stage, I want to kind of talk about the end game. I want to cover a few general possibilities as to what might happen next and let you play the rest of your campaign out. I mean, we're well beyond, I guess, the starter point, but this is what I'd consider like the entry into end game or late game in the Realm of Chaos campaign. By this time, it's realistic to have 2 souls and control of all of Kislev. It's possible to have gone further and potentially wiped out Norska or the Legion of Chaos, or perhaps both, and holding on to some of this beachfront territory as well. However, the reality is you don't need any of that. You just need to properly hold on to Kislev's lands, and you can hold out until the end of the game. One of the major threats to this security plan is Scrag the Slaughterer in the southwest, right? It's basically inevitable that he will conquer the Empire slowly but surely, and they will never be organized enough to stop him. It is critical that you intercede on their behalf. It doesn't mean you have to wipe him out immediately, but it even helps a great deal to declare war on them. As you can see here, he'll start pushing right through the center of all their settlements and going for yours instead. But that means that it gives you the opportunity to wipe out some of his armies without having to chase him down yourself, right? And if you can wipe out 1 or 2 or even 3 of his armies in a row, maybe knock out a camp or 2, it'll be a real setback to him. Every time you do that, you buy time for the Empire to rebuild from their losses and potentially recover land. Over time, you ultimately do want to help push Scrag back to nothing. If there's anything that I really think you want to focus on as a project at this stage in the game, it's not necessarily, I don't think it's wiping out the Legion of Chaos. I think killing off the Norska can be nice, but it's easy. It's so easy to defend this choke point. You want to help the Empire kill Scrag. You want to push this bastard back into the corner and kill him once and for all. It is hard to do that while trying to manage making it into the Rifts with your Legendary Lord and holding on to all these other choke points. But like I said, it's the first thing you want to do to secure yourself the future in this campaign. Whether you keep these lands for yourself or return some or all of them up to the Empire is kind of up to you. The other major concern here is that eventually most, if not all, of the major Chaos factions will come bearing down on you from the north. Minsky Nurgle's here. You saw before he had taken Krakadrak. He's going to keep showing up. We've got some Khorne armies showing up over here. Khorne will always eventually build up from the north here and finish things off and then come down to find us. Eventually Tzeentch will as well. Slaanesh, since they don't auto-declare war on me, didn't immediately cause problems, but it's not like you can avoid them forever. I think that if it's possible, it's worth waging a war in the northwest direction, right? Your next project might be to try and wipe out the Legion of Chaos, not with the intent of holding these territories or expanding your flank or necessarily defending this entire beach line against Chaos, but just to to rid yourself of another major enemy, right? So it's something worth considering. Again, you'll certainly have Nurgle coming from the northeast. The Norska may be alive because it's tough to find room to reach out and take out these settlements once and for all without kind of overextending or getting that army trapped or, taking some big risks. But ultimately, it's not too difficult to hold off against Nurgle and the Norska with just one army, some garrison buildings, and good use of this choke point to the northeast. I do think eventually it's important to take some settlements past the choke point in order to achieve this, since it ends up spreading out their forces. You can put defenses here, and it gives them more opportunities to raid you, rather than having to fight them directly, right? Gives you time to run around. But so the focus here really is on holding all of the Kislevite lands. We want to work hardest on destroying Scrag or providing opportunities for the Empire to do so, which requires a strong commitment at first, but once the initial battles are over, it's much less committed. Next, we want to consider pushing northwest to kill the Legion of Chaos. More than likely what'll happen is you'll just get into kind of a stalemate where you trade these back and forth between Legion of Chaos and Khorne, but that's not really a bad thing, right? You have a lot of fallback position here, and you want to make use of that. It's better to keep the fighting focused on the northwest than it is to let enemies slip into your main territory and actually get into your valuable land. If you can do all of these things while maintaining a steady hold in the north center and the northeast, should be able to continue along in this situation until you actually reach victory. Now, with that being said, I think that covers everything I wanted to for this guide. I definitely had a hard time with this campaign. There's so many variables and so many things that can go wrong. As other people have said, it's the kind of campaign where there's a lot of opportunities to make a mistake, especially in the first 50 turns, that can kind of wreck the campaign for you. And there's also a lot of situations where both, like, you have two choices and they're both mistakes, right? They're both wrong. There's a lot of times where you don't have a good option. You only have two bad options, and you still have to pick one and stick with it, right? But if you can use the terrain to your advantage, as well as the invocations we have available and a lot of defensive buildings, you can use that to your advantage. You can also enable your allies to succeed. It can also limit the direct pressure on you as well. It really is important to try and pace yourself to get into the rifts on time forever. Again, you can see I delayed it for far too long in this campaign, and ultimately that just puts you at greater risk in the long run, because over time the Chaos factions are going to continue to consolidate, they're going to continue to buddy up. There's a good chance that they're going to push Cathay to the brink, and then it's just going to be you, right? So you want to make sure that you keep on pace with that, or it's just going to hurt you in the long run. But with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Best of luck on your campaigns. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you did enjoy the video, and comment below what you'd like to see next. I'd also love to hear your feedback and suggestions on how you approach this particular campaign as well. Whatever the case may be, have a great day, and we'll see you on the next one.